I'm Gary Carruthers, president of New Mexico State University. We recently passed in the last election an $18 million bond issue to actually remodel Jet Hall, Jet Annex, and the old Renfro Gym. The problem is we had asked for about $21 million to do that. They only gave us $18 million, so I'm going to have to go back to the legislature and ask them in this particular case for $2.1 million so that we complete that project. And it's an incredibly important project because 2 or 3 of our fastest growing disciplines at New Mexico State University are in engineering, and Jet Hall is an engineering building. But in particular, chemical engineering's there. They handle a lot of toxic chemicals and that sort of thing. It's not a safe environment, and so we're going to have to remodel it, redesign it so that we have safety for our students, faculty, and staff. So this is one of the highest priorities for New Mexico State University, is to complete that project, but to complete it the right way, and we need $2.1 million more to do so. We can ask for money to improve our facilities, but it's going to be very difficult to find money to build new square footage. And so Doña Ana Community College has a major appropriation request to do the fix-it-up kind of things that you do with HVAC systems and painting and new roofs and that sort of thing. And so that will be the future of our request, much like Jet Hall. We're not building a new building, we're rebuilding and remodeling and fixing up older buildings that just need help.
I'm Robert Garza. I'm the city manager for the City of Las Cruces. As you all know, the City of Las Cruces is a water provider. There's over 100,000 people that rely on us to provide them with clean, drinkable water. We are building 3 new water wells this year. And as part of the new wells that we're drilling and putting in place, we would like to make those systems smarter. The city is replacing water wells that previously existed, and so the housing around them, the thing that's above ground, are 40 and 50 years old. They leak and they're not protecting this investment. So we need to put in a new housing around them. But even more importantly, we want to equip these water wells with state-of-the-art equipment. Water wells will last 40 or 50 years. And if you think how technology has changed over that 40 to 50 years, we want to put in smarter systems that can not only monitor the quality of water, but the quantity of water that's in these well fields. That's going to help us manage this limited supply of water that we have and make sure that we have a very strong 40-year water plan out ahead of us. So the request to our legislators is simply to help us with capital funds to put in the best water supply system we can afford for the future. That's what we're after. 5 years ago, the City of Las Cruces did an assessment. We had concerns because there were some neighborhoods that had septic systems in them that were, the neighborhoods aged and people were getting themselves into a really tough spot because they had small lots and the state wasn't going to allow them to put a septic tank back. So if you think about it, 40 years ago, the laws and the rules and environmental requirements were very different than they are today. So the City of Las Cruces hired an engineering firm to do an assessment of all of our community. They found 2,200 locations where we had septic tanks of concern. And then they ranked them from very, very concerning to less concern. And those that are very, very concerning are where we're trying to target our energy and effort now. There's 2 major issues. One is a lot of those septic systems are near wellhead protection areas. So, we have water systems that we manage and operate, and we are very concerned with the drought, with the water table dropping, and we're afraid that we're going to contaminate some of our water supply, and we certainly can't have that. And then another high priority are people who live in small lots that are 40 to 50 years old, that have aged systems. We know that when those systems fail, they will have no option to do anything because the Environment Department now requires 3/4 acre or larger properties to put in a septic system. And a lot of these are half acre or less. So what we want to do is access funds from our legislature to go out and build trunk lines, put in sewer lines in the roads as we rebuild those roads, stub out pipes to each property so that when those homeowners' systems fail, rather than having to fight with the state or get a special provision, they can simply hire a plumber and tap into the system that we already put in place for them. So this is thinking way ahead, but it's an environmental project, and it's also a means to take care of our residents' future problems. Street improvements. So I think the best way to describe the needs in Las Cruces is we have over 500 miles of roadways tangled around our city. And if you put that in perspective, it's about equal to the interstate highway system between Las Cruces and Santa Fe and back. They're all in different shapes because they were all built at different times, different standards, and they sit in this hot sun and they deteriorate, okay? Well, the city has a maintenance fund where we're capable of taking care of roads that are in reasonable shape. The problem is that maintenance fund was put in place after we had already had a lot of degradation and deterioration, and so we started with an imperfect system. Where we're looking for help from our legislators is to go in and do some major capital improvements to raise the standard, because once we get the standard raised, we have enough resources to maintain our roads. We just don't have enough resources to reconstruct some of the neighborhoods that have just completely deteriorated. When our Recreation and Aquatic Center was initially constructed, the thought was we were going to have a full-service, multi-purpose recreation and aquatic center. And the funding for that came from our legislators. They all generously got together and they all chipped in a considerable amount of money to help make such a large project become a reality. The city had property, so we contributed from that respect. We had a plan that was able to implement relatively quickly. At the time, the governor pledged funding to join the legislators in building this really nice center. And in the end, that funding fell through. It was not appropriated. And therefore, we never built the major competitive pool component of that regional recreation and aquatic center. As a result, time has gone by. The center is open. It's heavily used. Our community uses it. It's not just people from within the city, it's the outlying areas as well. And now we believe that it's time that we finally get that phase 2 in place, put the competitive pool on the ground so that we can help that project come to its potential, and its potential was a full-service recreation and aquatic center.
I'm Greg Smith, City of Las Cruces. I'm the Mayor Pro Tem and Councilor for District 2. Well, the Aquatic Center is a project that was started about 8 years ago, and so part of what we're trying to do now is finish something that got started at that point. Probably one of the things that a lot of people are talking about, and certainly in our part of the state, is economic development. And with the Aquatic Center, there's some very direct benefits. Certainly if we have major events, swimming competitions, triathlons, things like that, where people are coming to Las Cruces, they're staying at our hotels, they're eating in our restaurants. That's one aspect of that, certainly. So there are a lot of different ways that the pool can be used, and we do feel that it's going to reach a broad spectrum of our community.
My name is Chuck McMahon. I'm the Assistant County Manager with Doña Ana County. Doña Ana County is requesting $7.2 million this year to totally reconstruct Airport Road in Santa Teresa. Airport Road provides access to the industrial park, to Union Pacific Railroad, to our airport and our newly built Customs and Border Protection facility. Airport Road is a critical piece of infrastructure for the state. It provides access, like I said, to those facilities, but also then on to the port of entry. Airport Road also supports the diversification of the state's economy. We're getting into the export market more heavily than we have in the past. We have over $1 billion of exports in 2014 from New Mexico to Mexico, and this allows the state, of course, to create jobs in other sectors.
We made a request of $2 million new for the Water Resources Research Institute, And WRI, as it's called, actually is a statewide institute. Some of these dollars actually go to other universities, but New Mexico State University is the host of WRI, and therefore their request is always in our budget. But we're in desperate need of a water assessment plan for the state of New Mexico. And that's critical for us, particularly in these dry times. Already we can just feel that Texas lawsuit coming because they know that we're pumping water in this valley. They're saying you're cutting off the flow of water down the valley by pumping. And so we believe that if we don't do a proper job of assessing the water volumes that we have available, maybe discovering new aquifers, but also doing a better job of conserving water, and we have to do that through water assessment and planning. Otherwise, the courts will rule against us. So we think that's one of the most important requests we'll have, is for WRI to have an opportunity to go through all of that assessment process, roll that up into a statewide water plan, and therefore we can defend ourselves against those who want our water. Well, I think the interesting part of WRI is we also are beginning to do a lot more work with saline water. And all this southern part of New Mexico is underlain by all kinds of saline water. Even here on our campus, we have experiments in growing grass using saline water. And if you drive by there sometime, the grass looks pretty good. Now, we don't know what the long-term effects of doing this, but we're constantly trying to find funding to either figure out a way to use saline water productively and or a less expensive way of cleaning it up. But if we could do that, we have lots of water in southern New Mexico. It's just that we've got to figure out how to use it effectively, efficiently, and safely.
I'm Stan Rounds. I'm the superintendent of schools here in Las Cruces, New Mexico. Our first request is for adequate funding for the public schools in New Mexico. When I started in the early 1980s as a superintendent, we received over 52% of the entire state budget went just to public school education. It's down around 42% now. And so over the years, we've tried to grapple with how do we build back the funding into public schools. In our request, we're requesting that we have adequate funding. There's about $500 million, that's $500 million shortfall to meet the levels that were back 15 years ago as far as the funding for students, yet we're asked to do more. So one of the parts of this is the use of the permanent fund. And it's a little bit controversial. It'll probably be the biggest controversy in our request. And that is that we return to a practice to carve out 5.8% of the permanent fund proceeds that come in new and intercept those and use those for public school funding proper. The second issue we have is in our dual credit. We have the early college high school. We have a lot of high school students who attend Doña Ana Community College and also New Mexico State University. There are classes that are dual credit. You get credit both for college and credit for high school. That's good practice. Early college high school, it allows us to graduate kids both with an associate's degree and with their high school diploma when they leave high school. And so we want to continue that practice and continue that funding.
The whole harmless tax policy went into effect in 2005. Essentially what it was is a promise from the state to say, we're not going to tax food and medicine anymore. And the city said, wait a minute, we rely on gross receipts tax to run our cities, and if you're not going to tax food and medicine, we're not going to have enough money to run our cities. So they put in place a provision in state law that says the state will give us a check in place of what we would have gotten otherwise. They held us harmless. In 2013, the New Mexico legislature changed the tax law and said, we're no longer going to continue to hold you harmless. We can't afford to. Therefore, we need to phase it out. So they said, we're going to phase it out over a 15-year period. What we are looking for from a policy perspective in this legislative session is for our legislators to make sure that we are part of the conversation and that they understand that there's towns and villages and cities across the state, that we're not all the same, and one size does not fit all. In fact, the City of Las Cruces is one of 12 cities in the state that will never be made whole as a result of that 2013 law. There's concerns that we're receiving more revenues because we've imposed this new GRT early. And the reason we did that is because we know that after about a 10-year period, we're going to be losing money. So we're hoping to keep this excess revenue today and do investments with that will be seeds today that will prevent us from losing money in the future. And that's really the core of what this whole harmless question is. Predatory lending is an issue our city council is very much in favor of putting some controls in place. The current state of affairs with title loans and payday loans and other similar structures that we have, relatively unregulated, and people are being abused. There's people having to pay 500% and 600% interest on loans. In some cases, they just never really go away. And our city council is supporting an effort, a statewide effort, to undertake some legislation that will cap the interest rates that anybody can charge for those type of loans. And the target is no more than 36%. That's still a very high number in my opinion, but it's much better than 500% and 600% that they're paying now.
My name is Billy Garrett. I'm the chair of the Doña Ana County Board of Commissioners. One of our interesting projects that we're asking for support from the legislature this year has to do with full vehicular access to the spaceport from Doña Ana County. And it really consists of two components. One is having the road from the spaceport to the Upham interchange be made into a state highway. And the second thing is that we get the Upham interchange on I-25 made into a full vehicular access interchange so that buses and trucks have no trouble getting through that interchange when we've got full operations going on at the spaceport. New Mexico and Doña Ana County residents are putting a lot of money into Spaceport America. We basically already have a purpose-built spaceport. It's the only one in the United States. And we believe that the development of commercial space industries is something that's going to happen in the United States and around the world. We're in a really unique position, but in order to capitalize on that, we have to have access to the spaceport. Now we have enough money to build most of the road, get it in pretty good shape, but not to have it fully paved. And finishing the paving is something we think we could do through excess revenues. That's already based on existing taxes. So we're not asking the legislature for any money. What we're asking for is support for the idea that this road really deserves to be part of the state highway system rather than just a county road. And on that basis, we're willing to talk to the legislatures, to work with NMDOT and the governor in terms of maybe trading services for maintenance. But ultimately, it's really about sending a message to the businesses that we'd like to see use the spaceport, to people that want to go out and see space operations, that this is an important part of our infrastructure. It's an important resource for all of New Mexico. And in order to get the interchange going, that's a project that's going to take years, probably 5, 6, 7 years, once we even get it on the list. So the first thing is really to get recognition that this is a part of the overall development of the spaceport. The end game on this whole thing, of course, is for Doña Ana County, central New Mexico, to have more jobs. This is a job development opportunity, but we have to understand we've got to finish the infrastructure. We're not asking for any money. We're asking for continued support. The legislature has provided that in the past. We would appreciate your continued support.
The overweight zone was approved by the legislature in 2011. It's a existing 6-mile zone from each of the ports of entry. We're proposing this year to expand the overweight zone to 12 miles. This would include or allow the Union Pacific Intermodal Yard to be included in that overweight zone. So rather than allowing 80,000-pound trucks, as we do in the United States typically, this zone allows a 96,000-pound truck to operate within the zone. It has already attracted a number of jobs, and we anticipate the expansion will continue the growth. The IRB protest provision exists only in the county statutes. It does not exist in the municipal statutes. What it does is it takes away from the county commissions throughout the state the ability to make decisions on industrial revenue bonds. And we feel that this issue is a local issue for the county commissioners to decide upon, rather than also having the State Board of Finance have to be brought into the hearing. It's an issue of fairness. It only applies to counties. It doesn't apply to municipalities. And so again, we feel that the elimination of this protest provision will create some fairness and create some stability and predictability at the local level.
The third item is a serious one, and it's around the designer drugs that are out there now, and it's teen substance abuse. There's something called the Youth Resiliency Study that happens every year, and we're trying to track how our kids are involved in that. It's a burgeoning crisis that we have, and we think the state of New Mexico needs to look at some of our statutes that are on the books to tighten that up a little bit, because the designer drugs tend to be outside of what the legal restrictions are.
My name is Davin Lopez. I'm CEO and President of Mesilla Valley Economic Development Alliance, also known as MVEDA. What we're trying to do is we're asking the legislature to remove some language in the ability for the utilities to provide economic development rates to companies that are coming into the area. Right now, in our coverage territory with El Paso Electric can offer economic development rates in El Paso, but they cannot do so in New Mexico because we do not have excess capacity. So what we're asking the legislature to do is remove this language, these words, excess capacity, so that we can begin to have dialogue with companies and the PRC so that we can offer economic development rates and really be at par with the rates that are being offered in El Paso. Right now, we have a 16% cost differential between companies moving to El Paso versus Doña Ana County, and that's huge in terms of our abilities to try to recruit those companies and really attract more jobs to the region. We've been working with the Jobs Council for about 18 months now. The Jobs Council is really leadership from the legislature on both sides of the aisle, looking at solutions for job creation. They have, over the past 18 months, come out with a recommendation and list of what they believe are components that will help job creation throughout the state. What MVEDA and the DACLC is supporting is their top 3 recommendations, and that's increased funding of our Job Training Incentive Program, which is JTIP. Also, stronger financing for our LEDA, which is basically a closing fund to help bring more projects and companies to New Mexico. And third really is to increase the marketing budget for the New Mexico Partnership, which is the state marketing arm for economic development.